Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about the NIL investigations being halted by the NCAA and the implications of that going down the road. Tons of unknowns there. But it is time to talk about the teams that won the combine. There are so many teams across college football that we're watching. Tons of their athletes really have really solid days and show that they can develop talent, which is a ton of the battle in the recruiting world. So definitely a big recruiting win for some of these teams. But before we jump into that segment, I do want to remind you all that we get tons of questions and inquiries throughout the show. The best way for you guys to get through to the show and have your questions or comments pop up on the screen is to use the link at the bottom of the screen, GSMCPodcast.net. It is a huge help not only to us here at the network, but to you all. If you want to watch and have a fun back and forth, we can definitely do that. So use that link. Again, it's GSMCPodcast.net. But let's jump in. There are so many teams that had great days. There are so many players that had great days. But in the world of college football, recruiting is 90% of the job, it feels like, at this point. I'm sure coaches would tell you the same. It is absolutely insane the amount of work they have to do, whether it's in-home visits or flying around in their helicopters to different high schools or what have you. But luckily for them, around combine time, they get to sit back for a second and let their former players do the work for them. So there are a couple of teams, and they are the teams that you expect to be here, that had really, really good days, that showed that they can develop talent at a elite level. Some teams that struggled with that in the past, and we'll start with one of those teams right now. Texas had a day. I don't think there's any other way to put it. Let's start, obviously, with Xavier Worthy breaking the 40 time. Never a bad thing for your program to see your guy up top and have that as a recruiting pitch. Although the 40, you can weigh the importance of that as you please. But at the very least, when every player around high school football looks at that list, it will be a Texas player up top. And that means something. It depends how much to each player, but it means something. Let's start with the defensive side of the ball. Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat did their thing. I don't think there was any worry about either of these guys necessarily slipping too much, but Tavondre Sweat came in at 366. It's a big weight to be moving around in, and he had some questions to answer, and I think he ticked off all the boxes. Obviously, nothing was overly elite when you look at the vertical or the 40-yard dash, but I think going through workouts, he showed teams what they needed to see. I don't think there's any question about that. And then Byron Murphy was one of the best D linemen in the entire day. I mean, he did pretty much everything across the board incredibly well. There were a number of guys that had him already in the top 15 that came away from that thinking maybe he's a little bit too low. So he might have played himself into the top 12. I know the Broncos are looking for some trade packages, so it could be a very interesting day for Byron Murphy. I think he goes somewhere between 10 and 20, but we'll see, because there's a big difference between that number 10 pick money and number 20 pick money for sure. But otherwise, Jalen Ford had a solid day. Didn't necessarily do anything spectacular, but I think he's someone that, if not drafted in the late rounds, could go as an undrafted free agent. And then JT Sanders had a great day. Was one of the better pass-catching tight ends out there. Showed a ton in the route tree work, because in tight ends today, they're going to put a lot on you in the passing game. And JT Sanders obviously had to run a ton of routes in Steve Sarkisian's offense, so plenty comfortable doing that. The other pass catchers, A.D. Mitchell was the guy. I don't think there's any question about that. He did everything as elite as you possibly could have hoped from him, and really solidified himself into the first round, and possibly pretty high in the first round. There have been a lot of differing reports, but at the very least, if he's there at 32, the Chiefs, I feel like, will be taking him. And then Xavier Worthy, There's some mock drafts out there that have him going 32 to the Chiefs. So both these guys just had great days. Obviously, Worthy ran the 40 and then was doing interviews the rest of the time. But sometimes that's all you need when you have enough good game tape out there like Worthy has. But some off the radar guys for Texas. Keelan Robinson had a really good day and I think played himself into a draft pick. Christian Jones and Ryan Watts the same. Ryan Watts especially really showed off his athletic ability when I think there were a couple of Texas fans that were surprised that he left a little bit early, but he really showed out and probably, almost definitely, I think, played himself into the draft. But let's keep moving here. I think the team that won the day, the team that had the best day across the board is Florida State. And that comes as no surprise. I mean, obviously, a fantastic team that was losing a lot of guys this year. So it starts, obviously, with Jared Verse, just a freak, an absolute freak of nature. I've seen a mock draft with him going to the Falcons, and it seems more and more that my hometown team will be going with an edge rusher. So if they do, I'd be more than happy with Jared Verse being that guy. Trey Benson, the running back, had a very good day, ran a 4.39, answered a ton of questions, did a lot of really, really good work throughout his workout. And in that running back class, I'm sure there's someone out there that has him as running back one right now. And then Keon Coleman had a solid day. There were tons of wide receivers that had pretty remarkable days, so not exactly sure where he falls in the pecking order. Probably somewhere in the Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey group, I would assume, but who knows. But had a really solid day, showed off his physical ability. But the guy that stole the show, and I think we all saw it, was Braden Fisk. He was just remarkable going through every single workout. He was remarkably explosive. His change of direction was just absurd for a guy that size. He gets as low as can be. I know some of you saw the overlap between him and Byron Murphy going through the bags workout, and man, Braden Fisk got all the way to the ground before exploding through that last turn. So there's a ton to like about this kid. His motor is off the charts. He loves football. There's no two ways about that. That dude plays with an aggression that is inspiring to a lot of young kids, I'm sure. And then some other guys. Jerry Jones had a good day. Ran a really fast 40. So if you're a corner, that is a good little moniker to help teams take a flyer on you later in the draft. So I think he will definitely get picked. I think Johnny Wilson, it was going to be hard to pass over a 6'7" wide receiver. I won't lie to you, but he showed off his ability. He did his thing, and I think he will definitely be probably a day 3 draft guy, but plenty talented. And when you're 6'7", you can do a whole lot of things. And then Jaheim Bell, the tight end, showed his versatility, did a ton of really, really good things. We've talked about this tight end group. It feels like it only gets stronger every single day, but Jaheim Bell is one of those guys, kind of like Jatavian Sanders, where kind of more of a pass-catching wide receiver type tight end that has been kind of taking over the NFL the last little bit. So Jaheim Bell, I think, had a really good day, and probably another third-day pick if I had to guess. But a great end to a great year for Florida State. Obviously, tons of outside stuff, the playoff drama, the battle with the ACC, opting out during the Georgia game that did not necessarily go to their liking. But at the end of the day, Florida State had a very, very solid day and helped themselves continue to build what they started a year ago. And then let's get to the big dogs. And by that, I mean the Georgia Bulldogs. They had a day. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone out there. I think the only negative to Georgia's day was some people said that Brock Bowers came off a little bit quiet, or just didn't come off quite as well as he would have hoped in the interviews. And I think knowing Brock Bowers through watching press conferences and different things, the dude's a very introverted guy. He is not overly comfortable talking to a big group of people. That is very obvious. So I don't think this is necessarily a detrimental thing. I don't think it hurts him at all. I just think it's kind of the way he is. But when you get him on the football field, there are very few people that can do what he can do. So I don't think it'll be a problem for him at all. But Ladd McConkey was the one of the Bulldogs that really stole the show, had an incredible day. I've seen mocks with him in the first round. So this wide receiver group is all over the place. I'm sure there are a ton of different boards out there with a ton of different rankings. But Ladd McConkey had an incredible day, showed off what he's best known for, which is just doing everything very cleanly, whether that's route running or catching every ball that comes towards him or just playing in a straight line. If you look up his gauntlet drill, it's just remarkable how down the line he was that entire time, catching every pass and being laser focused on that. So very impressive. And then the offensive tackle, Amarius Mims, just a specimen of a human. There are so many tackles in this group, and I'm sure they're like top 6 guys. I can't even think of all the different names that will probably go in the first round, but I think Amarius Mims will be one of them. So tons of offensive tackles to pick from. Amarius Mims is a guy that I think could be a 10-year starter in the NFL because his physical ability is obvious. It's just, drilling down some of the finer points, which is pretty easy to do when you got the frame that he's got. So definitely a great day for him. 3 guys on the defensive side of the ball. Javon Bullard and Kamari Lassiter had incredible days. Both of them showed off a lot of the actual football ability they had. They tested really well, no doubt about that. Kamari Lassiter had the best 3-cone drill in the entire draft process, but in the ball drills, that's really where they shined. Everything looked so smooth, everything looked fluid, no wasted motion, so ton to like about both those guys. And then Tyke Smith had a really solid day, ran a very fast 40, I think 4.46 if I'm not mistaken, and just did a ton of really good things and showed off his knowledge for football because he's played a ton of it. So for Georgia, it's the rich keep getting richer. There's no two ways about that. I think Georgia will be on this list until further notice, honestly. But another team that is losing a ton of guys, sent the most guys to the combine in a very, very long time, is the Michigan Wolverines. And I think they had a really, really solid day. Not necessarily, kind of up and down with some of their guys, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of their guys made a ton of money, which is the ultimate goal here. So J.J. McCarthy was the talk of the town. Obviously, with the top 3 quarterbacks out, I think he played himself into the quarterback 4 role, or at least that's what the people making the mock draft seem to think. So I'm going to roll with them for the time being. And then their wide receivers, Roman Wilson, did his thing. He showed off his ability. Cornelius Johnson had a solid day. I think will probably be a 3rd-day pick, but did a ton of really good things and showed off his ability. And then Blake Corum did what he expected to do. He is forceful. 27 reps of 225 on bench is horrifying for a guy that size, but he's a beast, so there's no two ways about that. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you had Mike Sandristril, perfect workout. When you look at the ball drills and you watch him in particular, everything is perfect. It's hard to find a flaw in this kid, and I think whoever gets him is going to have a starting nickel from day one, and he is going to play really, really good football for you. So everyone should be excited about that. And then Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle, really had a solid day, showed his athletic ability, and probably played himself up a couple of rounds because of the need that some teams have for defensive tackles and the number of defensive tackles that will go a little bit earlier, with some teams wanting to wait until the 3rd day. I think Chris Jenkins is a guy that you could pick up a little later in the draft that would help your team immensely right away. And then finally, another team that was at the top of the world in college football a year ago, Washington. Michael Penix kind of led this group, obviously, had a good day, showed off his ability, can really spin that ball, has huge hands, that spiral is a thing of beauty. But I think he's probably sitting at quarterback 5 right now. It's hard to tell. I'm sure between him and Bo Nix, there are a lot of different iterations of that order. But I think he had a really good day. He did everything that he could have done. And then the receivers had an incredible day. Whether it was Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan had a solid day, but Roma Dunze really stole the show. He did everything just at an elite level, especially for his size. I don't know if some of you saw that clip of him staying out on the field to do the 3-cone drill because he refused to leave before he got a 6-6. It just shows you the type of guy he is, and I'm sure there were scouts out there that absolutely love to see that because the dudes that stay after practice are the dudes that get to the Hall of Fame, right? So definitely a good sign for him. I think there are plenty of people that have him as wide receiver 1. I'm sure if you go around different front offices, you will find any order of him, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. you could imagine. So I don't think there's any big separation between that group. And then some under-the-radar guys. Devin Culp, the tight end, had a remarkable day. Ran a 4.47 at tight end, which is just insane. And then Roger Rosengarter had a very, very good day. Troy Fatanu as well. 2 offensive tackles that in this offensive tackle class are among some of the best. So tons to like about this Washington group. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Braylon Trice had a really, really good day. Ula Foshio had a really, really good day as well. Both of them showed their athletic ability, which was on full display if you watch Washington throughout last year. So I think both those guys, whether it's day 2 or day 3, I think they can come in and really surprise some people and be contributors pretty quickly for a team. I know all these teams were kind of the obvious teams, I think 5 of the top 6 teams from a year ago, which makes sense, but it definitely does help these teams in recruiting when you can go into people's houses and say, look at our guy break the 40-yard dash, or look at our guy go top 5 after balling out at the combine. Tons to work with in the recruiting world after the combine. So those teams really, really helped themselves. They did a ton of really good things, and I'm sure they will be capitalizing off that in the recruiting show going forward. But we're going to take another break here, and we come back. We're going to talk position coaches, some guys that you might not know the names of, that either took over for someone that needs to fill big shoes or just needs to deliver in a year that their team has a chance to really strike. So we will get into all of that right after this.